Yeah, I can hear you. Hang on a second. Okay, there we go.
Hi.
Just took a second. Cool.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for accepting this invitation and for sparing some time for us and especially for my students. The purpose of making this video is purely academic, and I am going to show this video in my classes, and also we will keep it on internet for a record, because you know that there is a huge communication gap between social scientists and applied scientists, and usually they don't interact if we talk about this part of the world. So currently I am teaching technology law in Tashkent State University of Law in Uzbekistan, and we are doing a lot of stuff related to digitalization. Unfortunately, the applied scientists or very orthodox sort of robot scientists, they don't accept our invitation because they think that we are just a layman and we are wasting our times, and innovation is something which is dependent only on them. So that's why I decided that we should record this interview to give a message to everyone that we do interact, and uh, we need to decrease this communication gap because it is something which is the demand of this era. So first of all, I would like to ask about you, what sort of work you are doing, and I mean, where you are located, a little bit about your background.
Okay, uh, so my background is, let's just start from the beginning. So in school, I first got interested in robotics when it was Lego. We have Lego competitions, and we have some VEX competitions in the US. So that's kind of how I first got started, interested in robotics. Then we went to high school. We have first competitions. So I did first for a few years in high school. Then when I got out of high school, I mentored first teams when I had time. I went to college, got a computer science degree. When I got out of college, got programming jobs. And then I think it was 2005. I went to my first Robogames in San Mateo Bay Area. I went every year between 2005 and 2018 when it finally shut down. The guy basically retired, the organizer did. So when I was at Robogames, the great thing was there was people from all over the world at Robogames. So I met a lot of people, talked to a lot of people, got a lot of connections, and that's when I started doing some freelance on the side work in robotics. Just basic stuff, some research development, some beta testing, a few programming projects, hardware evaluation, so on. And then, like a lot of people, so the last year or so has been kind of challenging. I know for a lot of people, and I'm in the same boat. So I don't really have a set job. I'm a contract worker, and so I do programming and I also do robotics too. I've had a lot of robotics consulting and helping for startups, especially in the last year or so. There's been a lot of companies want to jump in, do automation. One of the silver linings to the pandemic is that there was a lot of research and development going on in robotics, but it was I don't want to say it wasn't focused, but there was no really purpose. It was just like, we're going to do these cool things, and we've got years to do these cool things, so let's just take our time. do a research and development in our labs. But the pandemic has kind of focused some of that, and there's a lot of companies seeing a huge benefit. So real quick, I need to kind of make a distinction. There's a lot of times when I talk to people, when they talk robotics and AI, they're really just talking software. So what I'm talking about is more hardware, more a physical robot. There's a lot of companies seeing the benefit, especially in automation. Think of when a warehouse during the middle of a pandemic, the supply chain's under stress. The workers don't know where they can come into work. The workers have to quarantine. There's been a lot of emphasis or a lot of discussion and a lot of development on how to use a physical robot to automate a process. So like warehouse robots are a great example. I mean, I know it's been going on for a while, like Amazon's a great example, but a lot of more people are thinking, hey, like the post office and so on, they're starting to think when unforeseen circumstances happen, like a pandemic, if we have some robots to help out in these stressful situations, help the, PPE use and so on, help workers out that are overworked. I mean, hospitals are the same way. A lot of hospitals are trying to see how they can automate and lessen the load on people. So especially in the last year, there's been, I can give you example after example, but there's all kinds of companies out there trying to figure out how to use robots, similar to my buddy Snow back here, not only in businesses, but in homes. Telepresence robots, that's another great example. So you're sitting at home, you're kind of isolated, quarantined, and you can't get out and about. Think how cool it would be to have a telepresence robot that you could drive around at a place of business or a location. I mean, even something as simple as you want to, there's like a museum or a place you want to go and visit. There's a lot of people thinking about why not have a telepresence robot that you could drive around, or a doctor, or another great example is a doctor or nurse wants to visit a patient in a home, but it's not good for them or the patient to be there. So you can just have a telepresence robot. But telepresence robots are also a great example as far as we've had telepresence robots and they've been around for a while now, years, but the pandemic has helped kind of focus that. So that's kind of what
I'm the person who is doing all these sort of things. And you mentioned something very important, and I want to pick on this. You said that when we talk about robotics, especially social scientists, we talk about softwares, but the spectrum is very broad, and hardware is something we need to understand. So my question is that people like me, or the lawyers, or the policymakers, who have no background in robotics. But on the other side, we find many people who didn't get any formal education, didn't go to school, but they are very proficient in coding and robotics. So how a person like me can start understanding what's going on in your world? I mean, what are some of the introductory level things we can explore by ourselves? As you know that there is no monopoly of education, and no one can say that I have monopoly on education. Everything is available on internet. So can you just recommend some resources, or what are some of the basic things we can start in order to understand what you are doing?
Well, I mean, this talk is a great example. Just asking questions, getting out on your social network and networking with people in the field of robotics, and just doing stuff like this, reaching out, talking to them, asking questions. But one of the things I do really agree with Elon Musk on this. There's a lot of really cool resources out there. I know YouTube can be kind of filled with landmines. There's like really bad resources and really bad channels. but there's a lot of really good free information out there. You don't have to actually, well, it's good to have a degree, but if you want to learn something, there's all kinds of free good resources out there. There's a lot of websites. So a lot of the companies right now, this may be a little too high end for people who are programmers, but there's a lot of really cool resources out there to learn ROS, the robot operating system. And then NVIDIA has their vision AI machine learning SDK and programming environment. And then Amazon has RoboMaker. I mean, those may be a little high end, but I would definitely start. There's a lot of cool resources out there on YouTube, and just type in robotics and stuff. But like I said, that sometimes the best thing to do is just do what we're doing. Is, you know, you asking me questions, me helping you out, social networking, because the topics and the issues, the legal sides, the government sides, all that kind of stuff right now, it's really kind of, it's not, I don't want to say wild west, but it's kind of close. There's not, I mean, in the US, there is some guidelines and some laws, but they're more just guidelines, is because robots are going to become everywhere. So when you talk AI, machine learning, you got software, but the trend now is in the future, it's been accelerated because of the pandemic, but the trend now is that you're going to have physical robots. A great example is there's been a rumor that Amazon's coming out with a home service social robot that's 2 or 3 times the size of a cat or an average sized dog. And that stuff is going to become more and more, you know, everywhere. And right now, I'm probably long-winded here, but right now, it's kind of just kind of a gray area. There's a lot of talk about legalities and responsibilities and privacy and can a robot be hacked? All kinds of stuff. There's a lot of talk going on right now. I mean, one of the simple topics that I think would be great for you and me to talk about is, so I have a company who's developed, like Amazon's example, but I have a company who's developed a home service robot, a butler. If they put that in a home and something happens, something unforeseen happens, a privacy concern, an injury, damage to your home, who's responsible? Who's responsible for that robot's actions? So is it me? Is the responsibility of a homeowner to have robot insurance? But what if the robot behaves outside the parameters of what I expected it to, and does something? Is the company that I bought the robot from, are they responsible for that damage? Can I sue that company? I mean, and to me, that I've debated a few friends about this. So if we can find out why the robot did what it did, whatever it is, it caused some damage, $100, $1,000, $1 million, whatever the damage. If we find out that there was a certain code that wasn't fully tested, can we point to the person who wrote the code? Can we point to the person who socially tested the code? Can we go down to that level and we say, hey, we can sue the company, but can I sue the person who built the robot out of spec on the assembly line? Can I sue the person who wrote that line of code that caused the issue? There's all kinds of, I mean, we can go on and on. We probably talk for hours about this kind of stuff.
Actually, we do talk a lot about societal impact of artificial intelligence or new innovation technology. We also talk a lot about liabilities issues, as you were mentioning. And also there is a huge, actually full-fledged science of human-computer interaction. But a hardware kind of person, I wanted to ask a pragmatic question, that how often do you feel or have you experienced any challenge Or can you just quote an example? Did you see anything that you just thought that this law and regulation people, they are creating hurdles in my job? I can do certain things with full confidence, and I am sure about their pragmatic importance for ordinary people, but these lawyers and policymakers and politicians, they are not allowing me to let me do my job. So have you experienced something like this?
Uh, I haven't personally experienced anything like that. Because like right now in the U.S., there's just a lot of talk about rules and regulations and laws. Uh, there's a lot of guidelines being talked about. There's a lot of guidelines that the industry itself, the robotic industry itself, is trying to develop guidelines and rules of conduct and stuff for people to follow when they test and evaluate robots. But let me give you a kind of an interesting example. This may help, and if not, just tell me that it's not. But so you know the last mile robots. So the last mile delivery robots, a huge topic of conversation in the last 6 months. So what I'm talking about, you're trying to get some object or package delivered from the truck to the door of a person's house, or you're in a city and you're basically doing something as simple as trying to deliver a food or medicine or toilet paper or whatever from the store to the apartment building. So I've heard a lot of discussion both from city leaders and lawmakers in individual cities about rights of ways, passages. Where do these robots go? Where do they navigate? Do they drive on the sidewalk? How fast do they drive on the sidewalk? What kind of safety concerns? We don't want these robots driving around and running into people. Do we allow them in the, so like in the US, we have bike, on the sides of the roads, we have bike lanes. Do we allow these robots in the bike lanes? And then what happens to the people riding bikes in these bike lanes when you have autonomous robots driving these bike lanes? What happens in sidewalk areas? The one of the biggest points of discussion is a lot of your older cities in the U.S. have narrow sidewalks, and a lot of them need repair and are not very level, not very smooth, or hard to navigate even for people. What happens when you put a delivery robot, a two-legged robot, a four-legged robot, or a wheeled robot in a sidewalk? What happens if you put that in a bike lane? A lot of bikers are not very happy about this because they see these delivery robots taking up their bike lanes. The other issue we're seeing is that handicapped people that have mobility issues that have to have scooters or wheelchairs, a lot of robots take up that same area, that same space. So there's a lot of concern for bike interest groups, people who need assistance groups, and city planners trying to decide how these last feet delivery robots are going to work and function. I mean, to me, that's a huge topic of discussion. At least with me and my friends for the last few months.
Yes, you are absolutely right. And actually, in our world, we are also discussing a lot about these sort of issues, especially questions related to privacy versus security when it comes to facial recognition technology, or security concerns of self-driving cars, and liabilities related to robotics, which is being used in medicine or other occupational kind of things. But at some point, I feel that there is a problem in understanding that lawyers, they don't understand technology, and technologists, they don't understand law. How far this is correct? And do you think that the stakeholders, I mean, the applied scientists and social scientists, both are important stakeholder, how much applied scientists' feedback is important in creating rules and regulations when it comes to make rules and regulations related to a thing which is purely falls in your domain, not in our domain.
I mean, that's a good question because I am worried that I mean, I don't know how it is, and I think it's Pakistan. You're in Pakistan. I don't know how it is there, but I always worry about bureaucrats and politicians that have no knowledge or expertise in the field. Robotics is a very complicated field. There's a lot going on, so I'm always worried about lack of knowledge and understanding. And I hope that lawmakers and bureaucrats and city planners and city organizers are at least trying to reach out to experts in the field of robotics, because there needs to be a dialogue, there needs to be communication. If we start writing laws, I'm always worried that it's going to stymie or limit the creativity, the growth, because it's really difficult to predict the future. I mean, I wish I could. If I could predict the future, I'd be rich and I could retire, and I could be living in some desert, tropical island somewhere. It's very hard to predict the future. I mean, Musk is a great example. Musk is always dealing with the government and government regulations and laws and trying to get around them. I feel it's going to be the same way in the robotics field, because eventually what's going to happen is that city planners and politicians and government officials are going to see robots everywhere. And then they're going to go, oh, we need to start writing laws. And I hope at least there's some talk back and forth, some dialogue before that happens. But I am apprehensive about that. I guess the best way to say. I don't really have a great answer, other than I hope that talks like this, we put these talks like this out on the social media, YouTube, and other channels, and city planners and bureaucrats and people who need to write these rules and laws will see these conversations and these dialogues, and will have a better understanding of what needs to be done.
Let me take the side. For example, you applied scientists, you make a robot for recreational purpose. I am completely lunatic about these things, and just for the sake of example, someone makes a robot which does nothing but just jumps on its table, and he feels that, yes, I have a kind of accomplishment and my robot is doing these tricks. But another person, he can use the same robot for transporting explosives or some harmful material or narcotics from one place to another place. So we lawyers, we think that why we should accommodate these applied scientists, why we should spend so much intellectual logistics in making rules and regulations for these things which this person has created only for recreational purposes. Yes. So do you think like this, or do you think that there is something which I am missing when I look at these things from this dimension?
There is, see, in the U.S., there's apprehension because, I can't. I'm a big sci-fi fan, and I watch sci-fi movies and sci-fi TV shows and stuff. And I've been doing it for almost my entire life. As a young kid, I watch TV, reruns all the time. So I think there is a little bit of apprehension that's been created by these by the media, not the media, the entertainment media. They think of scientists. When they think of a scientist, they think of a mad scientist who doesn't care about what's going on in the world around him. He's just so focused on his project or his idea that he doesn't care about what's going on in the world around him. He doesn't talk to people. He doesn't think about what he's doing, the consequences of what he's doing. And yes, I'm not saying there isn't people out there like that, but I don't think it's so isolated that somebody's in a lab somewhere and they're so isolated that they don't care what they're doing and what they're developing. I think most people, this is, I'll eventually come around to answer your question, but I think most scientists are responsible. They want to put safeguards in. They want to make sure that their robots can't be used for harm. Because if you're spending years and years developing something, and you either want to be known for that or you want to make a business out of that, for most people, making a dangerous robot is not what they want to do. It doesn't make good business sense. Most people don't want to be known for making a dangerous robot, a security risk robot. They don't want to be infamous because it's not really, they won't be famous, they'd be infamous. Oh, I was the guy who made that robot that killed everybody. Or I was that guy or a woman who made that robot that took pictures of people when they didn't want pictures taken or invaded their privacy. I think the majority of scientists and researchers and developers in the field of robotics are see that it could be a problem, but but there still needs to be some safeguards. If you want free, open development, if you want quick advancement, you have to have some freedom. But as individuals in and around robotics, I think it's our job to point out to people if you see a dangerous situation, if we see a dangerous robot, I think it's kind of our obligation to say, hey, dude, what you're doing doesn't make a lot of sense. So yes, I wouldn't say don't be over worried like it's a TV movie of the scary movie where you have a mad scientist running around developing a robot, but I think there's a balance that we can have where we can have a few laws, a few guidelines about what robots could be sold and what robots can be out in the world, but also think it's the responsibility of the researchers and developers to monitor themselves and to monitor their colleagues and to make sure that what we're doing is safe. Because like I said, I don't think it's in anybody's best interest to develop a robot that can create some kind of hazard, whether it's invasion of privacy or whether it's harm or whatever. I don't think it helps anybody, because if I'm developing a robot, I don't want somebody else to develop a dangerous robot, because if they develop a dangerous robot, then nobody's ever going to want to use my robot. So I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's not as bad as some people
there are very important points you have mentioned, especially that robot scientists, they are responsible and they do care about the things which they are producing. And secondly, that no one wants to become a notorious person by making a harmful robot, and the robot scientists, they are actually striving to make useful things for mankind, for themselves as well. From this point, I have a questions related to intellectual property. Intellectual property is an area which concerns more to the robot scientists, but lawyers and policymakers, they are more proficient in this. So this is an area where we can confidently say that, okay, if we don't know about coding, robotics, and hardware, you also don't know about intellectual property. So do you think that in your part of the world, I am talking about USA, very strong intellectual property laws, people are getting incentives, government is investing into research and development, private funders are available. An individual like you, how much are you concerned about the intellectual property, or do you think that your opinion or your voice should be heard when it comes to making intellectual property rights or laws in your country?
Okay, that's a huge topic. So let me try to break it down into two areas. One, uh, I think there's a huge debate between open and closed software. I think there's a place for both, but I think there's definitely a debate we can have, which is the best, open and closed. And then my personal thoughts. So, uh, and try to protect my own personal IP or my own personal development and time. So let's start with the open and closed uh, projects or software or hardware. So we need to kind of strike a balance, because I've seen over the years, I've debated a lot of people on this, but I've seen over the years, when you develop an open software, open hardware project, your development cycle, your ability to improve, make things faster, better, is so much quicker, because you have a community behind you. You just not have in a silo where you're in a small little company. Well, even the big companies, the same problem. You get into this silo, and you close yourself to the outside world. You put blinders on. You don't allow anybody to see your code. You don't allow anybody to see your hardware. Sometimes I think that causes all kinds of issues. It slows down your process of development, slows down your improvement, slows down your iteration, because iteration to me is really important. Iteration where you do small improvements. The agile product cycle. I think the agile product cycle, the iteration, making your hardware, software better. I think when you're more open, that it comes quicker. Your development time becomes quicker. And you make a project that people want. You make a robot that people want, because if people can work on your robot, then I feel you have more people who would want to have that and buy that and use that. If you open it up to third-party apps, I think you have a lot more value to your project or your robot. But I do see some advantages to being closed, because if you have a groundbreaking app, you have something that you spent years and millions of dollars on research and development on, I do think that you need to have some proprietary control over it. You shouldn't be worried about everybody copying your software or your hardware, or there should be some little controls over that, so that all your work is just not used, without some money or some recognition coming back to you. So that it has to be a balance. I'm a huge proponent of open source projects, open source hardware, open source software, but I do think that here and there, certain parts of your project, you should be allowed to close them off and basically make them like a black box, and have them be basically your IP, your intellectual property, especially if you spent years and years and millions of dollars developing that. So
yes, I think this was very hopeful version. And the most important thing I would say that everything which you have mentioned is based on cooperation model. And in conclusion, if I want to conclude it in a way, I would say that it is possible to sit together and communicate and discuss things in those terms which are understandable for both applied scientists and social scientists. And I think that the credit goes to you, that how you elaborated that, and you actually removed many misconceptions from our minds, that the robot scientists or applied scientists, they are selfish and they only care about what they are doing, and they actually, the sole purpose of them is to make money. That's why they are so much worried about their intellectual property protection. No one talks about the cooperation which you have talked about. And I think that we have discussed everything. We have seen that how we can use law to promote technology, and similarly from your side, how we can use technology to promote laws and regulations, and how we can use law and technology to regulate both law and technology. So I think that this was a wonderful session. And thank you once again for sparing time and for, you know, uh, giving answer to those questions, which I think that have not been asked by anyone to whom I know in person. I mean, from the lawyers and from the policymakers side. So thank you very much once again. And Mike, I will put this video on social media, as well as I will do a little bit editing, and then I will show it in the class. And I will post it on the social media and YouTube, and I will send you the link. So thank you very much once again.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.
Okay. Thank you. Take
Cool.
care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.